Justice Kavanaugh?
A few questions. What's your understanding of how the surrounding counties are dealing with this? Frederick County, Howard County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, and the like?
Yeah, Carroll County, for example, has taken the position that it will teach inclusivity without indoctrinating students. And so it's not introducing this ideology, extreme ideology about gender, whether your body says anything about your gender, whether doctors guessed at your sex, whether your pronouns change day to day based on the weather or not, whether you should petition for, unisex bathrooms. It's teaching inclusivity without that indoctrination. And our clients agree. Every student deserves to be respected and loved, and nobody disagrees with that. But you don't do that by forcing others. In fact, religion is another one of the categories in the equity regulation that is required to be respected. The principals, when they first responded to this curriculum, their concern was for the religious students, that they were going to be dismissed and shamed for their beliefs.
And I think you just said this, but you're not seeking to prohibit instruction in the classroom. You're just seeking not to be forced to participate in that instruction.
That's correct.
The term coercive, I think, has been used in some of the colloquy, but the right term is burden. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor. And if you think about their example of saying, like, the Fourth Circuit said that, the students were never asked to change their religious beliefs. Is it enough if you just ask them, will you change your religious beliefs? Or does there have to be something more? That is really not a workable standard. And schools should not be treated differently than any other government entity as far as what their obligation is. And it somewhat flips the Bill of Rights on its head if we're worried more about extreme examples that don't happen to protect the government from the parents as opposed to protecting the parents' fundamental rights to direct the religious upbringing of their children.
And then in terms of sincerity, in other words, if you're lying about your religious belief, that can be inquired into, but not the legitimacy, the reasonableness, the acceptability, the consistency, none of that. A court has no business questioning any of that about someone's religious beliefs, as I understand our case law.
That's right, Your Honor. In this case, again, the fact that the board has admitted that they would give opt-outs to Muslims who object to their children viewing an image of the Prophet Muhammad, but not our Muslim clients who object to their students reading these books, shows that kind of analysis would entangle courts in religious questions and invite religious discrimination.
And then I guess I am a bit mystified as a lifelong resident of the county, how it came to this. Can you just tell us what happened when in March of 23, what happened in terms of the objections and how the school board responded, to give us a little bit?
Well, I share your concern. Two of my kids graduated from MoCo and were opted out when they asked on their own accord to opt out of some instruction on sex education. And what happened is, we're not even entirely sure, because for the entire first year, the board promised in multiple places on Fox News and other media that parents would be notified and then they would be opted out. The last notice happened on March 22nd, 2023. The very next day, overnight, with no explanation, the board came out and said, we're changing the rule because we want all students to be instructed on inclusivity. That's at 547 in the appendix. That emphasis on all students have to receive this instruction. Nothing about administrability. And then from there on, even then they said, if we've already told you you can opt out, we'll let you do that, but more parents can't ask. And then it wasn't until later in the year when they actually revised their guidelines, which still allow certain religious opt-outs and just not others. So this was clearly targeted at religious parents objecting.
But then complaints were raised, right?
That's right. Hundreds of parents complained. These were mostly, according to the news articles, mostly families from Muslim faith and Ethiopian Orthodox who were objecting when they spoke to the board. The board accused them of using their religious beliefs as another reason to hate, accused a young Muslim girl of parroting her parents' dogma, and then accused the parents of aligning with racist xenophobes and white supremacists. And so, again, there's no question in this case that there is a burden, that it was imposed with animosity, and that it's discriminating against our clients because of their religious beliefs.